Awesome. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm really, really excited to be here today with Meg, Megan, and Ashley talking about a topic that is very pressing right now, which is digital marketing and how to make it work for you, even as the landscape is changing so dramatically. We're going to be here for about 30 minutes, and I'm just going to kick us off with intros. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Meg Clark. Meg Clark is a prominent SEO professional based in Northern Virginia and the owner and founder of Clapping Dog Media, love that name by the way, a boutique SEO agency. She's passionate about serving clients across diverse industries, helping them grow their organic traffic and achieve their business goals. Welcome, Meg.
Thank you. And I'm going to introduce you to Megan Hardy. Megan Hardy is a marketing consultant with over 18 years of experience in the e-commerce space. She specializes in helping direct-to-consumer brands unlock sustainable e-commerce growth through a holistic approach to marketing. Outside of her work, she developed and teaches a course in digital marketing strategy at the University of Washington.
Thanks for that intro, Meg. I am excited to introduce Ashley Rector, the founder of Quimby Digital, a social media marketing and paid advertising agency working with 20 plus high growth brands around the world. She's been featured in Forbes, NASDAQ, Business Insider, and Inc. magazine for marketing insights and entrepreneurship. And Ashley and I have been kind of in the same circles for a few years now, and she's just an all around awesome person.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Second that.
Yes, it's nice to be here with all you ladies. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kinsey Wolf. She's a growth marketer and fractional CMO for future-focused technology companies and the founder of Polaris Growth Studio. She specializes in sustainable, scalable marketing programs that build momentum and put your company on the map. And I have the privilege of working with her on a client right now, and she is phenomenal. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I feel very much the same way. Awesome. So let's get into it. Part of the reason this conversation is happening is because we're all digital marketers, and so we have these conversations with clients and prospects all the time. And there is a little bit of a narrative out there right now, which has some truth to it, but also has some nuance. The digital marketing isn't really working, and that's what we want to dive into. So I just want to open the floor. Anybody can jump in. If you hear a client or prospect say, my digital marketing isn't working, what do you say in response?
For me, I have a bunch of questions. I want to know, how are they defining what's working? For a lot of folks, that definition has changed quite a bit over the last few years. I want to know what they're trying and what they're doing and kind of how they're seeing those things perform. And then I want to know how are they measuring success, and not just KPIs, but getting into attribution and kind of how they're really understanding what's working or what's not.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Maggie can go and then I'll go.
I'm just going to piggyback off of you, Megan. I think when people say, oh, it's just not working, I think maybe techniques and things that maybe worked or were successful 18 months to 2 years ago, things have changed and they aren't quote unquote working as well. But at the end of the day, there are still people who provide great products and services, and there are still people who need them. It's just connecting the dots has changed, but digital marketing is working. It's just shifted over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to look at it through the social media lens. So if a potential client comes to us and says, social media marketing isn't working, the first thing we look at is what they've been doing historically and what they're trying to achieve with social media marketing. Because I think everybody's definition on what's working is different. And I know we've talked about this before, but in terms of metrics, every single client, every brand, different goals, and like what is success to one client could be a failure to another. So it's so you kind of dig deeper and see, like, okay, but what is success? Yeah.
Definitely agree. Yeah, it seems like there are established plays that people ran ad nauseum for a very long period of time, and those maybe aren't working as well. So like if they're not I know we're going to talk a lot more about this as we keep going, um, but if you're doing things the way you've always done them, that is probably not going to deliver the same results that it was delivering before. And that's a-okay because it is, that's the nature of the world we live in. But I would agree that getting into what defines working is a question of like, how do you, how does that client define it? How does that person define it? What are they looking to achieve? Um, One thing that I'd love to just get feedback on that I'm noticing is this desire for results in like no time. And I think we can all understand why that's happening. It's been a tricky economy and businesses are struggling, and so I have all the empathy in the world. But I've noticed that like working now also has a different time horizon. It feels like, and I'm not sure that that's actually helping anybody.
Yeah, I have strong feelings on this one.
Yeah.
I think, in the direct to consumer space, what I've seen, I would say even now is this over reliance on very direct response marketing where we just want to drive that conversion. And that's super expensive. And, a lot of brands were okay with that back in the growth at all costs days. But I think ultimately driving that awareness is really important. It can be, I think, challenging because, to your point, Kinsey, you don't see those results instantly. In my experience, like, again, in the direct to consumer space, there tends to be 2 to 3 weeks where you're not seeing any results from doing awareness marketing. And it's a little bit panic inducing because you're like, I'm spending money, I'm seeing no results, like turn it off, turn it off. And I have done that myself before, and learned that that is the wrong reaction. So I think, yes, I agree that there is a lot of impatience, and awareness is more important than ever if you actually want to run a sustainable and efficient program.
Definitely.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on this. I could talk about this for 60 minutes, but I think so. Since we run a lot of organic social and we're industry agnostic and we focus on earlier stage companies, the pressure to perform on social media, like you wouldn't believe the pressure we get. So in terms of at least organic social, I think that there's this misconception that you can go viral with like 6 videos. I don't, it came out of this like user generated content, influencer video content push in like the last 2 years, that virality is like this easy metric that can be achieved. And it's really hard. Like we've had brands go viral and we cannot repeat, like rinse and repeat how those brands went viral. I understand why they went viral. Like it was a great idea at the time, and it was like the perfect storm essentially. So I think for us, it's a lot of education on sustainable growth. So like, what are the metrics you should be hitting month over month? Like, do you actually have a strategy in place? Do you understand how social media marketing plays into like the overarching ecosystem of your other marketing goals? And measuring those metrics. So interestingly enough, we usually come into brands and they've never measured social success before, but they also have this idea of what it should be. And I'm like, you don't even know your benchmarks from before. So we have to kind of like level set,
Yeah.
And so for us, it's like within the first 3 months, a lot of brands are expecting like some sort of virality, frankly. And that's crazy. Yeah, it's interesting.
I completely agree. Ashley, I work in organic traffic. I'm in the SEO game. And I spend the majority of the first 3 months together just educating and saying, oh, I'm so grateful and so good job on creating that one piece of content, but we need to multiply this. And you're going to spend a lot of time, money, and effort in the beginning, and you're going to see no results. Like over time, the results will come. It's a marathon, and people don't love to hear that because they want this immediate return. But that's not how marketing works. And that's also, if you're not selling like chapstick, that's not how people buy. Like most of our
Right.
clients are not impulse buys, so they need to be educated and pulled along, because it's like, yeah. But the clients feel like, oh, well, as soon as people find out about me, as soon as they find me, they're gonna, break open their wallet, and that is not the case.
Yeah.
Definitely. We might see, a 6-month sales cycle. That's after they've already opted in and qualified themselves. So it's not realistic to expect that your marketing cycle is going to be, I mean, it might be shorter in some cases. Some of these AI tools where it's the first of its kind and you bump into it and you try it and sign up for it and then you're locked into a year-long contract you can't wait to get out of, speaking from experience. But like those are really unique use cases. Most enterprise, I mean, I'm in tech sales, so like the most enterprise software sales have a longer marketing cycle and a long sales cycle. That's not to say that I don't think any of us are saying that you can't see wins quickly. You absolutely can. It's just a question of like expectation setting. I think also something that we're going to get into more, but would like to kind of jump into now because it feels like it makes sense, is the role of strategy and how to think about balancing strategy right now, knowing that performance in traditional ways is probably not looking like it did before. So we've got these competing pressures of the sense that there's low performance, the need for results quickly because of the economy we're in, and how do we make space for strategy in that environment? And would just love to hear your advice because I think it's a really tricky question for entrepreneurs.
Like, who wants to go?
I can start us off. Yeah, Megan, you go.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a shift in thinking. In my experience, I think in the direct to consumer space, we had a while where, brands are growing so quickly that they don't necessarily have time to focus on strategy. I also tend to work with a lot of clients who have more junior teams, so they don't have that strategic resourcing. And it's kind of worked okay up until maybe the last year or so, again, because we were in that sort of growth at all costs space. But now, as we shift to be more focused on efficiency and, how do we build our marketing program in a sustainable way where we're not just like blowing through our runway and knowing, yeah, there'll be another investment round. Strategy is really important. And I see a lot of challenges that brands are facing there. Like, one, there can be kind of a reluctance to invest in strategy because I think strategy is expensive, but it's going to pay off. It's a good investment. And I think I had another second point in my brain and it just flew away. But yeah, I mean, I think it's critical. There it is. I think, I've seen a lot of brands get burned by, working with a strategist or a strategy agency, and they get handed off this 12-month strategy deck and they don't have the internal resources to know how to execute it. And so my approach to strategy with the brands I'm working with is typically not like, here's your 12-month strategy. Things are changing so fast that even if we know the business really well and we kind of have good historical data, which is usually not the case, a 12-month strategy is not realistic. So my approach is like, okay, 3-month strategic roadmap that ladders up to kind of our overall goals and objectives. And then we know we're going to be testing, learning, and adjusting along the way. I just think the 12-month strategy deck is dead.
Yeah, amen to that. It's a non-negotiable for us. So the first month is always strategy. And it took us a long time to get there. So we're 5 years in business. So I guess we're still babies, but like we used to jump in and hit the ground running. It made for bad client engagements, frankly. So for us, like it's the strategy. It's just a non-negotiable, and we can't measure performance without strategy. We have no idea what's working. Like there's no way. So in my mind, like I don't I don't understand how a brand expects somebody to come in and not evaluate their strategy or create a strategy for the work they're going to do in any capacity, whether it's a consultant, a freelancer, an agency, even like an employee. You come in and you're like, here's my first 30 days. Like, this is what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? So it's weird to me when clients come to us and expect that. And we've definitely had like, hey, can we just like not do the strategy and just like, and I'm like, no, we have to do the strategy, but it's an education point, right? So,
right. Yeah. It's all education from a organic perspective. Like organic SEO is foundational. It works with, and the foundation, the strategy that we build really speaks to all of the other marketing techniques. It's email marketing. It can play into social. It plays into your content marketing. It's like, I don't even know where to start. Like, so it's a non-negotiable. And if clients just want to jump ahead and get, just build me performance reports, it's like, ooh, the performance reports are going to be empty because we are only reporting against a strategy. And if there's no strategy, there's nothing to report. So it is it's an education. Absolutely. For all clients.
Totally. And I can very much sympathize with the desire to limit strategy. They've probably been burned. We've probably all worked with somebody who wasn't that great and got that beautiful deck at the end and nothing you can really do with it. And I also understand that it sometimes does feel like a big expense for no apparent ROI at the end of it. But the reality is that not having a strategy is a great way to waste more money than you would if you had one, because a strategy is something that a person who's an expert is going to use qualitative and quantitative data to build. They're not just, if you're working with the right partner, they're not just stroking their own ego with a deck that's going to tell you what to do. They're trying to help you achieve your goals so that you have a long-term relationship. I just feel very strongly that as much as I understand the competing pressure against going through the strategic exercise, it just is setting yourself up for, like, it feels like the right move, but it's setting yourself up for problems that were totally avoidable, and you're making the road harder for yourself than it has to be. Megan, you mentioned the idea of kind of shorter term strategies. I also like micro strategies. So if I were working with somebody who was like, I really don't want to spend a lot of time on strategy, then I wouldn't be spooked with the idea of a smaller scope strategy or something that's very specific. But you need something. You need some strategic exercise to show up on a channel. I want to dive in a little bit too to this, like, kind of, well, really, like, in this situation, what can founders and business leaders do to navigate the fact that we're looking at these changes? And I'm going to read out a couple data points. We've talked about some of these before, but I'm sharing them primarily to validate the experience that entrepreneurs are having, if they're having them. First really comes from Apollo's chief of product. On a podcast recently, he shared that outbound email response rates for, SDR type predictable revenue email outbound decreases by 10% year over year. We also see that, fewer or more zero-click searches, so people who search using Google but don't necessarily take any action. And Instagram engagement is another one where engagement rates across some industries are declining. That's not across the board. These are data points that require a lot of nuance to understand. But if they are, if you're seeing your performance metrics slip, what can you do? Where should you start if you're working with an expert like one of the amazing ladies here?
You had mentioned zero-click search, which is absolutely on the rise, and Google's plan with their AI overviews is to have more zero-click searches, so less people go to follow on and click through to websites. So organic traffic will drop over time. However, my recommendations is just you have to diversify. If Google organic search was your only plan, like, that's not a good plan. You need to diversify and be found on Google as well as social. You need to show up in multiple places. And zero-click searches, they've been around for a while. Like, It wasn't that long ago where you could search for what time is it in Tokyo, and you actually had to go to a website, and that was kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Now, things like time and weather and shop hours just show up on your search results page, and that is helpful. I think there's going to be a lot more zero-click searches for those informational types of things, but conversions are still going to happen on the website. Like some of your informational only based websites that used to get a lot of traffic and ran a business based on advertising, that they're going to get hit pretty hard. But if you are selling a product or a service and you get some more zero-click searches, I don't think it's going to be the end of the business or anything like that. That's fine. People will still need to click on and follow you and know your brand and build brand awareness, so that they convert with you on your site.
Yeah. So some models are impacted more.
Some models are
and
drastically impacted that I don't know if they're going to change. And honestly, I mean, not to go down a rabbit hole, but like we all knew what it was like when we were searching for a lemon blueberry muffin recipe, and you would go to a food blog and you would have to read about the next door neighbor and the origin of the recipe and all of that stuff that was done solely for SEO.
Yeah.
That's annoying. And all the ads that popped up, it's like, I just want to make the muffins, man. And it was really hard. And so I think like it stinks for the food blogger who got paid by ads. But at the same time, for the person who's actually trying to make the muffins, the recipe is just going to pop up and it's going to be a lot easier. I think big picture overarching that Google and the world is trying to make things easier so that you can be less distracted by all the platforms, get engaged and use the platform properly. So I think it's kind of unfortunate for a food blogger with a really great story about their lemon poppy seed muffins. But in the end, we just want the recipe.
Definitely.
That's probably an unpopular opinion.
I don't think it's unpopular at all, because to me, what you're really saying is understand who you're building for and build for them ruthlessly. And that is the success. Like that's what's going to make it work for you no matter what changes happen. If you understand your customer and you understand what they're looking for and you add value to them, no matter what channel you're on, digital marketing is not dead if you do it right. And so I love the way that you said that. None of us loved reading this long, fancy whatever about how they got this blueberry muffin recipe from their neighbor. That was a waste of time, and we kind of were forced to suffer through it because they buried the lead all the way at the end of that blog.
And I think I think there's a huge place for food bloggers and for recipe makers, and multiply that for any informational based site that used to get paid off of traffic. I think people are going to start subscribing to you. Like they want all things related to that person. We're seeing it with like Jada De Laurentiis. She has her own ecosystem. And if you subscribe to her on a monthly basis, you get access to her recipes, her videos, her whole feed. And I think that's where people are going. So once you've built your brand and you have a following, put people in a corral and then they can pay for all of it. I don't think obviously recipes are not dead, but I think the way people used to make money from those sorts of things is dead.
Definitely. The buzzwords right now for me when I'm thinking about how you do marketing well are, trust, community, and curation. If you're not solving for those things, then you're not going to be doing it right. Consumers, all of us are overwhelmed and oversaturated. And so we do go to these trusted spaces like, the one newspaper that you follow, or for me, it's Smitten Kitchen. If I need a recipe, I go to her first. I don't even go anywhere else. And I know that I'm not the only consumer who acts like that. And if you're building a marketing program for a brand, your goal is to have, whether it's on social or SEO or whatever it is, your goal is to have folks who learn to trust you and then engage with you and trust that you're going to curate the news they need. And that feels like a much more fun and achievable exercise than creating a million pieces of content to show up on a million different places just to serve some almighty algorithm god.
That's true.
Yeah. And I think, I do think that is going to be a change in thinking for a lot of businesses. I'm sure we've all, talk to the business owners who, you ask them, who's your target audience? And it's like, everyone. And I'm like, well, no, it's probably not everyone. And so like the next better answer is maybe you have a sense of demographically who your audience is. And that is very helpful. But I think the piece that I see a lot of businesses missing is really drilling into, okay, we know who our audience is. Now let's segment them out and really like take the time to understand who each of these segments are and how are they making purchase decisions. Like, how are they getting information? Just as an example, I worked with a brand a few years ago that had two very similar looking audience segments when you looked at the demographics. But as you started to drill in, what we found was that one audience segment really wanted just like, give me the data, give me the science, arm me with information, and let me make my purchase decision. And this other segment really wanted, to be a little bit handheld. They wanted to know that this has worked for other people like me. They wanted to hear from influencers and friends and family. And so when you have that information, those are two wildly different approaches to marketing to those segments. And there is just so much power in knowing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like digital marketing's not dead. It's just we're focusing so much more on storytelling now. Like before, it was infomercial, blasting out content, selling, didn't care kind of scenario. And the consumer now doesn't want to be sold to in that way. And so now we're telling these stories, at least on organic social, about like the brand and the mission and the ethos and like who's behind the company. And like these are consumers that love the product, but they're just talking about like how they use it. You know what I mean? Like it's less like, hey, for $10 you can blah blah blah. You know what I mean? So I think because of the storytelling aspect of it and finding those like human chords that we can weave in through the storytelling that just naturally, like push people to purchase or push people to follow you and rally around you as a brand because they're your community. It's just a slower burn. And frankly, like social is changing all of the time. Like just today, Instagram put out an update saying that, recommended content now is like 2 days after you post it usually. So that means that brands will post content and then 2 days later it's showing up recommended. And so it's always changing. And so I think that also gets overwhelming, like with the analytics. So having that compass in terms of storytelling and like your campaigns and all of that good stuff, like just it helps with sustainable growth. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've got a couple minutes left, so maybe we jump into one of the questions that we got, which is, are you finding that this is from Nicole, are you finding that paid ads are falling flat just as organic reach is? Yeah, so I'll leave it there. She had more context, but I feel like we're all going to have opinions on this one.
I'll jump in and say paid ads, things are changing. I don't think that organic reach is falling flat. I just think you need to have different techniques and different strategies to have it not fall flat. I can't speak too much to paid ads, but
yeah, I don't. So organic reach isn't falling flat. I haven't seen it on paid either. So my question would be like, what assets are you running on paid? The consumer is like much more savvy now. And so how are you selling to them in terms of organic? Like what's working on organic, what's not working on organic? Like the question is so nuanced. And then it varies by industry. But I guess if my paid was falling flat, the first thing I would look at are my assets and then like who are we running these ads to, and then the data points on like who is actually purchased and why, you know what I mean? And then like kind of reverse engineer what we think is wrong. Yeah,
definitely. Totally agree. I'm not sure that, I think everything is changing. So again, if you are not focusing on your customer and you're not updating your strategy to reflect the fact that AI is doing a lot on all of our channels, then you might feel like it's falling flat. But now is a time for recalibration, I would say, and kind of re-anchoring in the value that you deliver and who you deliver that to. Otherwise, it might really, it might crumble a little bit. It just feels like it's a kind of back to basics. As we wrap up, I wanted to get one kind of, I had a question for y'all. Do you feel like now is a time for big creative ideas, given that things are changing so much? Like, does the fact that we have new opportunities mean that we can be more creative and playful with our marketing?
I mean,
I vote absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry, Megan. I'll be quick. Yes. Like, I think for so long, we've all followed this playbook of like 4 to 5 people have found something that works, and we've all been formulaic and trying to follow it. And now I think it's like an upside down world. We don't know what's happening. There's so many new things in play with AI and, all of the things that you've got to turn things upside down and inside out. And you have to be wildly creative to stand out in such a noisy world.
Yeah. I mean, I love a big creative idea and creative problem solving. That said, I think, it's really easy to like get pulled in a million directions by all of the shiny objects that are out there and all of the people on LinkedIn who are like, you need to do this. No, you need to do this.
Yeah.
So I think you need to get very clear on, what are our objectives? What are we trying to achieve with these creative ideas? Does that align with our objectives? Sometimes that gets missed. And then how are we going to measure the success? And I think that piece gets missed as well. And that's, I think, where businesses start to feel like, oh, we're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. So like big creative ideas within the context of a strategy.
Well said. Well said, Megan.
I echo what Megan said wholeheartedly. And especially in social, I think there's always room to be crazy and creative, as long as we're measuring it and it doesn't totally disrupt like the rest of the campaigns that we set up to measure. But yeah, I think it's time. I think it's always time to be creative, I guess. So I don't know. I think that it reinvigorates teams sometimes. And I think there's added benefits, but yeah, it has to be contained so it can be measured. So yeah, exactly what everyone else.
Great call. Well, y'all, thank you so much. This was super, super fun. Y'all, everybody's email or everybody's websites are linked in. And then if you registered, you'll get emails and contact information for Meg, Megan, and Ashley. And if you have questions, reach out to us. We would love to answer them. But thank you. I'm going to end the stream now. Y'all are amazing.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank
you.
you. Good chatting.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.